Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. Okay, guys, so today we are doing my second 3 mini book review, mystery review thing of isolated closed circle mysteries. I started doing this in June. My first one was 3 isolated closed circle mysteries about people trapped at a hotel. And this time we are going to do Christmas in July. So quickly, just a reminder of what I mean by isolated closed circle mysteries. These are mysteries where like everyone's trapped together, people start dying, and they got to figure out like who done it before they're next. That is like my favorite subgenre of mystery, and I've just been on a real kick of those lately and really like looking for the good ones. And there's a lot of ones that are like adjacent to this trope. So there's 2 today. This is going to be a good example of ones that are almost what I'm looking for, but not quite, and then one that truly is exactly the trope I'm talking about. So I will just tell you that my inspiration for this particular theme, which is Christmas in July, so we have three mysteries that are Christmas themed and at least ostensibly follow this trope. My inspiration was an episode of Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries that follows this trope exactly, and I love it. It's my favorite episode of that particular series, and it's their Christmas special, and they are at a snowy country house, and somebody starts murdering all of them to the theme of 12 Days of Christmas, and there's this really creepy recording of the 12 Days of Christmas that plays the entire time. That was my inspiration, and I guess in the Southern Hemisphere, maybe this is a thing or like a tradition. This was in Australia in the 20s. So I don't know if they just like totally made this up. If you live in Australia or New Zealand, you can let us know. Is Christmas in July like a thing still, or did they just make that up? I don't know. But this was my inspiration. Was there's so many of this type of book that is set at Christmas, just because one of the most common ways to like trap everyone together for somebody to start murdering them is to snow them in. And when you think snow, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, you tend to think Christmas. So like, I think that's why it's such a thing. When we get to like closer to Christmas, I will do a second Christmas themed one of these because I have so many ones that I'm looking at that have that trope. So anyway, all that to say, today we are talking about these 3. So these are 3 isolated closed circle mysteries. Kind of. We'll talk more about how only one of them truly is, but at least from the back cover, when you read it, you might think that. All 3 of these are classic mysteries. So all of these were written during the golden age of detective fiction. And one of these obviously is Agatha Christie. So like kind of a really well-known name in that. Anne Meredith wrote under a couple of different names, but she was a member of the Detection Club, that very famous thing in the golden age, along with Sayers and Agatha Christie. And actually, when I first bought this and I saw Anne Meredith, I kind of laughed to myself and thought, oh, it's sort of like in Cards on the Table. One of the main suspects is named Anne Meredith. Turns out, named after this person because it was like a tradition for the detective club or the detection club to name characters after each other. So that fun little fact there. So this was written in, I think, 33. This was written, I think, in 39. And then Cyril Hare is an author I hadn't really heard of until recently. Really liked this. Spoilers. So I definitely will be seeking more out from him. But he wrote this in 1951, I believe. So in the 30s and 50s is kind of our time range. So they're all classic mysteries. You can see that cover-wise, they're very similar. And then all 3 of them actually have the exact same setup, which is there is a hated patriarch in each of these families who is calling their extended family together for Christmas, and that patriarch gets bumped off. So I thought that was kind of interesting that there's a very clear micro subgenre happening here. So in both An English Murder and in Hercule Poirot's Christmas, there is sort of like a main detective-y kind of person who you're following. Either like, obviously Poirot is a pre-existing detective who we know and love, and in An English Murder, I don't know if the person in this is a recurring detective, but he clearly is the one who's sort of like the most active in the sleuthing. Portrait of a Murderer is quite different from these other 2 books, and quite different from the typical type of book like this, so we'll talk more about that when I start talking about each individual book. And then I should tell you that of the 3 of these, only An English Murder is truly an isolated closed circle mystery. Really, this is a locked room country house mystery, and this is a country house mystery. So what I mean by that is that only in this one is it truly, we are all snowed in together, Nobody can come or go. There's no like outside police force who kind of comes in, though in this there is a police person who is staying at the house, so they get involved, and slowly people start dying, and so they have to figure out who is behind it all. So this is an isolated closed circle. I would call this both of these almost isolated closed circle mysteries, and they'll give you a lot of the same kind of thrills and vibes, and they also all definitely have like the wintry kind of feel to them. They definitely feel very like atmospheric, which is something that I really like in these mysteries, so in that respect I think they all deliver as well. So let me tell you my thoughts about each of these, and I'll tell you of the three of these which I would recommend the most. I'm gonna say the least about Hercule Poirot's Christmas just because I have an entire review video of this back when I was doing Project Poirot, so I reviewed it. I can't remember what I gave it at the time, but like since my reread, I've thought very fondly of this book, and at this point I would give it a 4-star. I can't remember at the time if I gave it a 3.5 or a 4, but I would definitely give this a 4-star now. I think this definitely captures the whole like claustrophobic family atmosphere really well. I think it also really has like a truly detestable victim, which is often a feature of this type of book, which I'm down for. And I think it does a really nice job of giving everybody who's trapped there like equal motive of why they would want their dad dead. Like there's a lot of very plausible suspects at play here. Also, this is high-key savage. The actual murder and like the locked room murder piece of this is so grisly and so graphic that like you will totally forget that Agatha Christie is thought of as like this cozy little mystery writer. So anyway, there's that. I think the outside detection piece I think is fine, but again, if this was truly an isolated closed circle, there wouldn't be somebody coming in from the outside. They would be like, I don't know, it would just be a little smoother, that piece. I don't know. I don't want to get into too many details because I don't want to get spoilery, but anyway, so this is, I think, this is something that I've seen listed as an isolated closed circle mystery. I don't think it is quite that. I do think it is very close though, and I would definitely, it gives you a lot of the same vibes, and it's something I would still definitely recommend to someone. Like I said, I would give this 4 stars, would recommend it to you, but it is not a true isolated closed circle mystery. But it's, you know, a great Christmas mystery. So if you're looking for something Christmas in July or just Christmassy, I would recommend this. Okay, next is Portrait of a Murderer. This is such an interesting book. I was reading the introduction, and apparently like Dorothy Sayers loved this book, and I can totally see it because this definitely has a higher order of writing than I think you often find in mystery genre fiction. It really does remind me in some ways of Dorothy Sayers in terms of like, there's a certain way in which this is more of a family drama that happens to have a mystery plot to it. And the other thing that is interesting about this book, but what ultimately keeps it from being truly satisfying as an isolated closed circle mystery, is that you spend the first, let's say this is like 250 pages. You spend the first 50 pages of this getting like pretty standard POVs from each of the children of the patriarch who they all hate and are gonna kill. You get a POV from each of them. So you have that as a setup. And then in the next section, you get the diary of the murderer, first person describing the crime. So you find out very early on who done it. And then after that, you're like following the murderer as they are trying to get away with it. So it's just like, it doesn't quite satisfy what I like in the isolated closed circle mystery, which is like this feeling of menace, of like really a whodunit, like a puzzle mystery type thing. This is not that. So like in that sense, you should know that. And I gave this 3.5 stars because it's not quite my mix of trope preferences. So it's not something that like I loved, but I was like, I really admire this. Like it was quite different than most mysteries I've ever read. The reference I saw in some of the reviews was Columbo. I've never seen Columbo, but apparently in that you would always find out who did it early, and then it shows you like how they did it. So it's that type of mystery, but it definitely, it's the trope in the sense of like, they're all together, and they're all like, at least, you know, to people who don't know who the murderer is because they aren't in their head following them, they're trying to figure out who did this. So anyway, I think it's definitely a really interesting one. It definitely has like the winteriness to it and like that kind of atmosphere going, which is nice. Something I will actually say about all 3 of these books, but really in this one, maybe less so in An English Murder, but definitely in this one and in Hercule Poirot's Christmas, this is so interested in the sex lives of these various people and like the degree to which their wives are or are not boning them. there's so much like oblique discussion of that, and considering this was written in 1933, I guess I just found that somewhat surprising. Like, I don't know. It was interesting because I feel like that was a large like character development point for each of them, was the degree to which they were or were not sexually frustrated. So anyway, that's just sort of like a side note. But anyway, this was like kind of a different mystery reading experience, and one that like I'm glad I had. And again, 3.5 stars for me, just because preference wise, it's not quite what I like, and I wouldn't recommend this to you as an isolated closed circle mystery. I would definitely recommend this more as like a country house type mystery, if that makes sense. Okay, and then we get to the one that I would essentially recommend the most. I gave this 4 stars, and this definitely fully satisfies what I like in an isolated closed circle mystery, in that they all quickly converge on the house. They get snowed in, people start dying. And this is a great example of like, you know who the murder victim has to be because they are so odiously built up in this. And like, you just hate this guy. He is like a complete racist bigot. Like there's a Jewish character staying in the house, and it's so gross the way he talks about them. I should say that essentially anti-Semitism is a recurring theme in the golden age of detective fiction type books, but this is one where the authorial voice very clearly is like not okay with it at all. Like, everybody hates this guy. It's following World War II, and like he's making these like horrifying, disgusting implications about like the concentration camp. Anyway, it's awful. You hate the victim in this one. That is very effective. So like, you know he's going to be the one to die. Like, you very quickly know who's going to get killed. They all get together, somebody dies, and then there's like the suspicion of like, did you do it? Did I do, like, who did this? And like, I really like that piece. I also like in these ones where all the characters do know each other, because one thing that's fun about like a hotel-based one of these mysteries is like, they don't know each other. So like, they don't know each other's backstories that could be clues, and sometimes like they're one person pretending to be another person kind of so like, there's that. In the country house version of these mysteries, where everybody knows each other, it's much more about like bringing up past petty remonstrances against each other, and like this growing feeling of suspicion of like, can I even trust the people who I'm closest to? Yeah, anyway, I really enjoyed this one. I think it really effectively delivers this trope that I love so much. Like, this is a great sort of vehicle for that. And there's another Cyril Hare book that also I think has this trope, which is called With a Bare Bodkin, and I own that. I will definitely read it, and I'm totally glad. Like, I just happened upon this when I was in Waterstones. I think I was in Waterstones when I picked this up. I was definitely in London. I picked this up in London. It was displayed, and I was like, oh, I love this cover. I know that name. I wonder what this is like. And when I read the back, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly the kind of book I was looking for. And I hadn't seen it mentioned in any of the lists online that I had been sort of like perusing for this type of book. So I love this as also just an example of like serendipity in a bookshop where you can find something that you're going to end up really loving. Okay, so this is my Christmas in July themed isolated closed circle 3 mystery review video. That's catchy, right? And basically what I would tell you is I really liked all of these. If I was going to tell you one to read, it would be An English Murder for this trope. But I enjoyed my time with all these. I'm never going to not tell you to read some Agatha Christie, so like, go for it. Yeah, all 3 of these are I think a pretty good read. And you know, you can either read them now if it's cold where you are, or you can save them up for when it gets cold later on in the year. But I think that will do it for this video. Definitely let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, what you thought about them. And I think that will do it. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below. And that will do it for today. I hope you guys are having an absolutely lovely day, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye.